Emma.
No.
Sounds like you're in denial now.
Watch, I'll give it to you next.
Me?
I know, I'd be
Oh.
sick like 2 times this year
What's that? Oh, it's on the other page. It's still right there, but we need you to give us a rundown of TPCast to remember the happy days from last year. Do you remember any of these? We do have title.
Paraphrase.
And the nice thing with title is we have title twice.
We actually have to reevaluate.
Yep. You said theme, I think.
And then
Not purpose, paraphrase. Connotation. I think you said tone. It's not tone, but it'd be like very close to tone for one of the last two. For A, it's not tone, but it's attitude. I remember the S. No. Not quite style. Shift. So, title, paraphrase, connotation, attitude, theme, shift, theme, and then title. Here's my suggestion when it comes to TPCast. I do think it's useful to do. I think that it's useful for you to take a look at the poem and try and identify, okay, where do I see some shifts? What are some overall attitudes and things like that? You are not going to have any kind of question really like on the multiple choice that we'll be doing, asking, how did you paraphrase stanza 1, kind of thing. Now, certainly, though, there could be some, what's the overall main idea of the poem, and by having a paraphrase, that could be useful. There certainly will be questions that could be tone-related, which is going to go into attitude. Shifts are common areas that they'll take a look at, and you've kind of seen this already on AP multiple choice, even though you haven't done poetry, but they're identify the type of shift that occurs between stanza 1, stanza 2, stuff like that could be useful to certainly take a look at. So while you may not have questions that are always directly matching up with it, I think it certainly does kind of force you to take a look at the words, the language, and things of that nature. I don't think it's going to be, I don't want to say worthwhile, I don't think it's going to be necessary for you to do a paraphrase of like every single word, in the whole entire poem. For the one that you're reading for next week, what would be a good way to kind of paraphrase? I wouldn't paraphrase every word. I probably wouldn't even paraphrase every line. But it'd be a good idea to paraphrase each stanza. So what's the main idea that's going on in the first stanza? What's the main idea going on in the second stanza? That kind of stuff. You take notice what you have above each stanza. Maybe. I mean, we've got to look at it to figure out, but you know that the title of the poem is dialogue, so looking at the title certainly could be useful, and then having, body, soul, body, above each stanza could end up kind of being useful, and if you're figuring out that that's who the speaker is, then there's a good chance that you know what that shift is going to be for every stanza if you have a speaker changing. So those kinds of elements from a TPCast I certainly think are useful to go with. I will collect your notes, your copy of the poem, when we do, the poetry quiz next week. But that doesn't mean that you're getting points, your 4 presentation points you're not getting for how your TPCast is set up or anything like that. It's more of, there's just these elements are pretty good to have. So I'm assuming we got a cold read here of There Was a Boy by William Wordsworth. Alex, you haven't read this before? Jay, you don't have this one memorized? Not Shakespeare monologue, it's Wordsworth, so if you weren't practicing that one, no. I think my theory, you should just get up and start reading Wordsworth, like, not reading, but like memorizing. See that. See how that goes. Morgan, difficult question. Don't ask Grace for help. What's the title? All right, There Was a Boy. Anything about the title jump out for any reason? Take a look at the title. See, look, you're saying no, and she at least is identifying something. You said it is past tense. All right, so half-point deduction for using a to be verb for Wordsworth, but we'll let him slide with that one. But okay, we have past tense. Any thought as to what that may mean? I mean, it's total guesses at this point because we're doing this before we've taken a look at the poem. We will come back to the title and do it revisited, at which point we can figure out, maybe what it would be. The boy. What do you mean by that? Why not? Is the boy dead? There are. So I'm looking for a little more detail for your interpretation. What are other? You said there's multiple options. Another option. Okay, so matured, which doesn't automatically mean grown up, but Virginia.
That, and I mean, it's just about a story. Like people always talk about, oh, once there was a whatever.
A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, like okay, kind of like opening to a story. Just coming up with what ideas are. All right, so hopefully we're hoping that with the poem we can start to figure out, okay, what is going on. So we got our title. What's next? Paraphrase. All right, so we got the P for paraphrase. This one's not broken into stanzas necessarily, but we can still kind of go in chunks with lines for it. So there was a boy, he knew him well, he cliffs and islands of Winander. Many a time at evening when the earliest stars began to move along the edges of the hills, rising or setting, would he stand alone beneath the trees or by the glimmering lake. So let's kind of take a look at this part. So first 5 lines. General paraphrase. What are some details? What are things that we know? Okay. At night. So, boy standing by a lake at night. You said like alone. You said island. Because what do we have in line 2? It's getting mentioned. Island right there. Winander, I'm guessing, Johnny, do you have like your GPS programmed mentally that you're locating where Winander is going to be right now? Yeah. Yeah, buffering. We're over in England, just so you know. All by himself, alone. What time of day? At night, evening. Okay, so we have that. So that's all we're looking really for a paraphrase at that point. Beneath the trees or by the glimmering lake, and there, with fingers interwoven, both hands pressed closely palm to palm, and to his mouth uplifted, as he, through an instrument, blew mimic hootings to the silent owls, that they might answer him. Can you demonstrate how that would go? Yeah. I didn't know if you were like a professional. Your fingers have to be interwoven. Not bad. So what's the boy doing? Cool. What was that?
My bird noise.
Have you ever gotten a response?
Never.
So he's calling out to the owls, hoping that they will, and Morgan's hoping, it's never happened, but hoping that they will what? Yeah, respond, answer. Look at this. Who knew poetry could be so interactive and fun? It's not going to work well like this. And it doesn't give you a whole lot of...
I think you go
You go like that. There you go. I mean, if we had Duck Hodges here, we could get like duck calls, but
I met him.
Izzy would be asking, "Where's Mason?"
I
And then we go, "Do you know Patrick Mahomes?"
love Patrick.
Yeah.
So,
And they would shout. Who's they? Who's they? Owls. And they would shout across the watery vale and shout again, responsive to his call, with quivering peals and long halloos and screams and echoes loud, redoubled and redoubled, concourse wild of yoken din. Okay, so we haven't gotten to this part yet, but when it comes to like connotation and you know, like for connotation, it could be symbolism. Connotation could also be I don't really know what this word means. What's din mean? It's a loud noise. Okay, so chances are, and I'm not trying to be smart aleck here. If we know this is loud noise, yoken's probably like what part of speech? It's an adjective. All right, so it's going to be something kind of describing the noise. Maybe we can get some context as to like what kind of noise it may be. But if we're able to figure out, you know, din, we know we're looking at an adjective. Maybe we can figure something out. So he's hoping that they're going to respond. Do they respond? Yes, it's responsive to his call. So what's it sound like? So, yeah, halloos, screams, echoing loud, redoubled and redoubled, concourse wild of yoken din. So the owls respond loudly. So this guy's pretty good at his owl calls. We're still waiting for our response.
Well, there is an owl that talks a lot in my neighborhood, so maybe I'll go out
in mine.
Oh my god.
Hello, Johnny.
Yeah.
Oh, it is?
Right outside my window.
And when there came a pause of silence, such as baffled his best skill, then sometimes in that silence while he hung listening, a gentle shock of mild surprise has carried far into his heart the voice of mountain torrents, where the visible scene would enter unawares into his mind with all its solemn imagery, its rocks, its woods, and that uncertain heaven received into the bosom of the steady lake. What happens here? I know it's just a quick little line. There came a pause of silence, such as baffled his best skill. The owls. And they stop responding, and no matter what he does, they're not going to respond. So best skill, which you don't have to show us again, but he would go through with his calls. You want to give it a shot? Yeah, not really. So no matter what he would do, there would be silence. So again, a little bit of a jumping ahead here, but what do we have right here, like basically in line 16? We have a shift because we're going from, hey, here's a loud response to now we get absolutely nothing. So when you have a shift, it could be shift in speaker, you know, as Virginia was kind of starting to identify with your dialogue phone. You could have shift in tone, you could have shift in location, you could have shift in content. You could, as I mentioned, have a shift in speaker, maybe character, anything along those lines. Shifts don't have to be certainly one type. So usually through about line 17, we're okay. And then line 18 is where things can sometimes get a little problematic for folks. Sometimes in that silence, while he hung listening, a gentle shock of mild surprise has carried far into his heart the voice of mountain torrents, where the visible scene would enter unawares into his mind with all its solemn imagery, its rocks, its woods, and that uncertain heaven received into the bosom of the steady lake. Any thoughts? And again, you're doing speculation at this point.
I think kind of like what it's saying, but like that sounds like something that he carried with him like,
Okay.
that like that imagery of like that moment, like
So when you say like carries the silence, like he carries like the memories of the time? Okay, so carries the silence and the maybe imagery of the scene. Very good, we're speculating. Okay, like of like the scene, kind of like
Yeah.
taking it in. So maybe as an epiphany. Mm-hmm. Okay. So since there's not that response, there's not the audible thing going on. There's not like any kind of physical interaction taking place. Now getting consumed by thoughts. All right. So title, paraphrase, connotation. Any words jump out for any reason. So, for example, we already had Yokin. Emily was just talking about mountain torrents, says maybe helping try to figure out what could be going on with the paraphrase. Yokin Din we already had. They might answer him, didn't mean to highlight it, but hey, we'll put that one up there anyway, because at least it looks good. And the other parts.
It says it's solemn imagery.
Down at the bottom.
Yeah, that could kind of instead of like how he feels about.
And like if you have solemn here contrasted with what's kind of going on up here with the owls. Like solemn, describing that scene, something that's going to be a little bit more introspective, kind of consumed by thoughts. Or if you're doing owl calls, it's a little more, probably not solemn, but amusing, playful, fun, weird. Just stare at your screen and get absorbed by technology, lack of appreciating nature. So yeah, that kind of contrast could be happening with the solemn imagery. The fact that any literary terms noticing, like any kind of figurative language. Good chance it's probably been written in the past. We know what ye means? It can be two things. It can be you. It can also be the. And they're pretty much interchangeable. Y used to be shorthand for TH. So you really means thou. Shay's just having a total. So like when you go into, like say old Williamsburg or whatever, and they go like, ye old shop, it's the old shop, the old medicine shop or whatever. So ye can go with you, and it can also go with kind of depending. So now Shay, you got something for Jeopardy when you decide to go on there. All right. Anything else? So connotation, it could be figurative language, could be words that simply kind of jump out, could be something that's just going to help you figure out what you have going on. If you're going to classify attitude, what'd you say? Okay, so like kind of like a nostalgic, a looking back. There was a boy. Usually, when you kind of think back to the childhood instances, and calling out to nature and animals, a little bit more playful. So maybe like a nostalgic kind of reminiscing idea. I'm blanking on how to spell reminiscing. I'm just going to cross that out and go with nostalgic because it's already there. Okay, so the boy's kind of getting the even though it doesn't say that there was a special boy, but this boy is different from the typical regular person. All right, FOND.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just talking about the boy, and it's just sounds like a fun.
So like just fondly remembered. All right. Anything different with the title that maybe we weren't picking up on before? There was a boy. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward, basic title. Already said about the past tense. Pardon? You don't know that. Doesn't die in the poem anyway. I mean, it's an old poem, so boy's probably no longer around. Okay, so like matured, no longer calling out to the owls anymore, except every random now. No, it's not about me. Morgan,
Wordsworth is made up. It's a poem.
wordsmith. Theme. Any thematic ideas? Be nice to owls. Call out to them. Maybe we'll figure out a theme by answering some questions. Ooh, you got one?
Yeah, you gotta enjoy what you have before it's gone, sort of deal.
Okay. And that doesn't necessarily mean like deceased, but like growing up.
Yeah.
You know, could be potential.
Sometimes you don't notice certain things until other things go away. You didn't notice them out in the sounds until the owls went away.
Okay, so but by focusing on one thing, you could lose, track of some other ideas. Shay, I think there's one in here for you. We'll find out.
Well,
So it's just 8 questions, and again, this one's not great. It's going to give you, some little time here to try to answer them. In theory, you would get 8 minutes. I bet you won't need that long
if I get one.
if you get one.
Not gonna lie, I was kind of hoping I wouldn't.
I'm still stuck on that whole you thing.
Yeah. I really remember.
One more, I already answered. I'm done. I'm waiting for you. I am fully aware that a lot of you really don't have a soft spot in your heart for poetry when it comes to AP multiple choice questions or English class in general. And that's why you were so excited when we said TPCast back on Monday. However, I will say this. I think by us going through and doing some poetry, and like I said, you're going to probably do like 5 or 6 of these over the next course of those weeks. When we come back and do the regular multiple choice, when it's just standard prose, it seems a heck of a lot easier. And already consider like how your midterm was going. Not that you were going, that midterm was piece of cake easy while you were answering it, but you know that your success rate is certainly increasing. And I think kind of doing this for a little bit and then coming back to the regular prose, it does go off as being fairly easy. Or easier, I would want to say. So, tone. What do we got? For speaker recounts the experience of the boy in the poem with You said reminiscing. Emily, you said reverent. Reverent, or fondly. Someone said reverent. Virginia said reverent. So like already, even though it was nostalgic instead of reminiscing, we're already certainly kind of identifying that. Should we pick on Isa?
I just want to know what it is.
What's apostrophe? You're talking to someone who's not, or talking to something that's not there, that's not present. They can exist, but it's not certainly there at that time. So which of the following would be apostrophe, where there is, kind of like a conversation occurring or addressing someone or something? You knew him well. A. Okay? So talking to the cliffs.
Also, but they're shouting on a big veil. That kind of sounds like they're talking.
Well, but this is, keep in mind, this is like narrating what were the owls do? They would shout across the watery veil, where here you knew him well, you cliffs, you islands of Winander, since he was there. So this is more of an address, where the other one is going to be with D, is going to be more of like a narration that's kind of happening with it. So a plug and play question, what would be the best fit between owls and that if you were going to have a transition? D, so that they might answer him. Some folks will go A, until, but it's more the idea that so. Why are you going to do this? I'm going to call out to them so that they will answer me. All right. You knew there was going to be a question where Jochen was going to come in. So this one could be a little bit more speculation, context. Shay, what'd you do for this one? B? Okay, you're going here. Good news is people are nodding their heads with you, so. Anything else? Between B and C? It is B. J-O-C, jocular, joyous, very similar to that, so kind of like joking, happy kind of manner. So that gleeful that you have is where you're going to get the Jochen. The word din is most strongly reinforced by which pairs of lines? It's D, 14 and 15, because that's when you're getting that description of, all of those things. The word baffled would best be interpreted to mean? Be A. Now, like typically baffled, you would be confused, but it baffled his best skill. It defied his best skill. No matter what he did, they were not responding back to it. So yeah, that's one where you do want to double check with the line. 7 and 8 is usually where things get a little, I don't want to say complicated, but people are less certain because we're getting here towards the end. Said C. B. You said A? It is A. It is A. I don't know what that look means, but.
That means that you just ruined my perfect paper. That's 6 for 6 now.
How about 8? Yes. So, I mean, if you were at a 6 out of 8 or higher, that's 5 category. Like I would say in general, I'd add 2 like this, and that would kind of give you an idea of where you would be at, on an 8 out of 8. You got 7 out of 8, you still would be like a 9 out of 8 power school wise. You got an 8 out of 8, be a 10 out of 8. So this one we're not, the next one we will.
Mr. Kater, are you coming down to see me?
No problem. Oh, this is presenting too, right?
Yes. I hate it. That's like 3 20 minutes of your class. I will say that before the year you class.
Okay, 27. Me and Maria.
Also has definitely come visit me
Yeah,
before 7.
What do you have going on?
Everyone in
Ethan, you're presenting too?
Well, they're doing some multiple choice questions for a poem I can